Convening the House Special Committee to consider miscellaneous communication numbers 1001 and 1002. Today is Monday, April 4th, 2022. It is 11 a.m. In conference room 423 of the State Capitol. This status conference is a meeting of the House Special Committee. Appearances of the parties first, starting with the petitioners.
Michael Beloy, Senior.
Carolyn.
And appearances on behalf of respondent.
Yes, good morning, Chairman Lobby, your fellow committee members. Howard Luke on behalf of Sharon, representing also Daniel Luke, representing Sharon.
Thank you, Mr. Luke. Thank you for your appearances today. As I understand, there was some confusion over the weekend as to whether or not this meeting was in person, and then there was both apparent and successful attempts to reschedule appointments and to get to appointments on time and to have people here. So I really do appreciate the willingness of the parties to be here in person after a period of time when we've had meetings that were a combination of in-person and virtual. Moving forward for the remainder of the proceedings of this committee, we will be handling these matters in person. So just so you know, and can plan accordingly. As I indicated in my letter to the parties of March 31st, 2022, this status conference is limited to procedural and scheduling matters and will not consider substantive or dispositive subjects at this time. Accordingly, the hearing or the meeting notice, has an agenda which again stated that this is a status of the House Special Committee's procedures and will allow the parties to ask questions regarding the procedures. The agenda for today's meeting is to have an explanation of the committee's hearing and decision-making procedures, followed by questions by petitioners and respondents. I want to acknowledge that this committee is in receipt of the submittals, and I do again appreciate the timeliness of the submittals by petitioners Michael Goloyu, which was received, I believe, let me make sure I get this correct, on or about February 10th via email. Petitioner Carolyn Goloyu, which was received on or about Friday, February 25th, 2022, as well as from respondent Representative Sharon Har that was submitted to my office on March 11th, 2022. As has been noted in prior meetings of this committee, we are concerned with alleged incidents of driving under the influence and conduct following the incident that was referred to the Standards of Conduct Committee pursuant to the petitioners miscellaneous communications 1001 and 1002. Guiding this committee's actions and proceedings over the course of a year and a half now at this point has been Rules 46, Rule 62, and Rules 14 of the House of Representatives. In addition to the petitioners' petition for us to review these matters and the House Speaker's memo of March 17, 2021, which provides a number of special committee specific rules. So in light of all of those things, and in light of the fact that a guidepost of this committee has been from the very beginning, both attention to fairness and due process, as well as looking at past practices of special committees that have been convened pursuant to these House rules, as I mentioned earlier. The next steps for this committee will be to conduct a hearing where parties will be able to present and committee members will be able to ask questions. And so we are looking at a hearing process and then followed by a period of time for the members to consider the evidence that it has been presented, and then to have a final decision-making meeting of the committee that, like all of these meetings, will be publicly noticed as well as broadcast. Based upon that, my proposed timeline is for a hearing of this committee where again, parties will be able to make presentations and committee members, most importantly, I think, to ask questions based upon the submittals and any presentations made. A meeting or a hearing date of April 13th. Now, in my letter to the parties, I indicated that I asked you to reserve this date in temporarily in the event that we can schedule it. I do want to note that our House rules do say that the committee needs only provide 48 hours notice of a meeting or hearing. However, at our very first meeting of this committee, I did indicate, so I don't want to, if the parties relied upon this, this be a problem. I did indicate in the very first meeting of this committee that we would give a 2-week notice in order to allow the parties to prepare for presentations. So we can proceed in 2 ways, petitioners and respondent. We can continue to hold the April 13th date if both parties agree and consent to waiving the 2-week period of notice that I had originally advised both parties that I would provide. If we do not have consent of both parties, then what we are looking at is an April 18th hearing date that we would have to notice by today. And I would ask that my staff would, following this meeting, if we go with the April 18th date, we'll have to coordinate with the parties for the best time, both with the parties as well as with committee members. So I'm going to first ask the petitioners, would you consent to a hearing date of April 13th first?
That's fine.
Okay. Respondents? And I understand you might have, that's fine. Okay, thank you. Thank you for accommodating our schedules because we are at a busy time in our legislative session. So we are looking at April 13th for the next hearing. According to past practice, there was a committee recently that had presentations by both petitioners and respondents of 20 minutes. So we would afford each of you 20 minutes to make a presentation followed by questions by the committee. So I would anticipate that the hearing could be completed within an hour. And I believe we are looking at a time of 9:30.
I have 9.
I apologize. I have to consult with my committee chairs. We are looking at a hearing time starting at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, April 13th. And I'm going to look at the parties. The Goloyus, is that a good time? Okay. And Mr. Luke?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. So that's laying out the procedures of the committee remaining and moving forward. After the presentation of the hearings, and as I stated, we will notice a decision-making hearing. I will say that, again, to acknowledge the receipt of all of the submittals of the parties, the committee, to make the parties aware, based upon the submittal of respondent Har and references to the official transcript, the committee is in the process of getting the official transcript of both the pretrial and the trial proceedings. So on that note, I'll look first to the petitioners. Any questions about any of these processes?
Yes, is there any way to get, I have attempted, and I'm not an attorney and I'm not a legislator, to get a copy of Representative Har's traffic abstract.
Ms. Goloyu, that would be your burden to have attempted to get that information. That is not something that the committee is going to engage in at this point.
That's impossible for me because, as I've said, I'm not an attorney and she doesn't even have her birthday, which I found out through other means, that that is not public knowledge. And I wanted that to show some sort of, I just wanted to see it.
I understand the dilemma you may be in, Ms. Goloyi, but that's not the responsibility of the committee at this point. We're dealing with the submittals that are in front of the committee and that have been provided to the committee. One further question, another question?
Yes, since the legislative session ends on the 5th of May, will there be a decision made before that?
In response to that, the intent of the committee is to resolve this issue before adjournment of the legislative session. Any other questions on procedures? Respondents? Questions? Okay. There being no further questions, we will notice the hearing for Wednesday, April 13th, 9:00 a.m. We will have this room open for the parties if you need to prepare and bring your materials in advance. So half an hour, enough time before in order to prepare, okay? All right. No further business of